Okay, let's look at some adjetivos practice today. You will need your notes, apuntes tres, a blank sheet of paper, and something to write with because we might as well go ahead and do your homework while we're at it. And remember that an adjective is a word that we use to describe a noun. Words like pretty, ugly, big, small, etc. These are all adjectives, and that's what we're going to be discussing today, how they work in Spanish. We will also talk about how these types of words change to match nouns. And nouns are is a person, a place, or a thing. These are some examples. Big shoes, small bed, red shirt. Okay, big being the adjective and shoes being the noun, small being the adjective and bed being the noun, red being the adjective and shirt being the noun. In Spanish, it's just a little different because we're going to switch it up. So this right here. Remember that nouns come before the adjectives in Spanish. It's the exact opposite in English. So instead of saying big girl, we would say girl big. Or instead of saying white house, we would say house white. Okay, so it's just the opposite. So now let's look at how these things work. You should have your apuntes 3.3 right next to you, so that you can think about which rule we're using for each one of these. We're going to look at una señora, and then the adjective is bonito. This is going to be rule 1. So briefly read what it says about rule 1. Rule 1 says that if it ends in an O and you need to make it feminine, you change the O to A. So let's look at our noun. Is our noun feminine? Where would we look to figure that out? We would look right here. We can either look at the article or we can look at the noun itself. They both end in A, so that looks feminine to me. So what do we do with this O? We change it to A, just like rule 1 says. That's it. So it should be una señora bonita. How about las plumas and then amarillo? The first thing we want to do is check the adjective ending. It ends in O, so what rule are we using again? We are using rule number 1. And what do we need to do? It says if it ends in O and you want to make it feminine, you change it to A. So do we just want to change it to A? Look at these endings. As and as. That's a whole lot of as there. So we need to make our adjective match that. Amarillas. All right, now this one, un muchacho francés. Francés means French, which is a nationality, okay? So let's look down at rule number 4. Hope you said that. If you did, great. Look at rule number 4. What do we need to do? Rule number 4 states that if it's masculine, you just leave it the same. You don't have to do anything to it. You only change it if it's feminine. So let's check our noun. Look at that noun, un muchacho. It's masculine. So we don't need to do anything to it. Francés. Los profesores. We have inglés. Inglés means English, which is a nationality, is what we're trying to say. So what do we do with that? Look at rule number 4. Let's look at our noun. Our noun is plural. So we want to make this plural. What does it say that we should do to make it plural? If it ends in a consonant, you add what? Es. Ingleses. I know it looks weird, but it's right. Una escuela grande. This is new. Let's look at rule number 2 maybe, because rule number 2 talks about ending in a consonant or in E. So let's look at our noun. Our noun is feminine. How do we know? Because it ends in A. If you're ever confused about whether the noun is masculine or feminine, you can always look at the article, right? Because the article is a dead giveaway. You should know if those words are masculine and feminine. So una escuela grande. Rule number 2 says that if it's feminine, do we change it to granda? No, we don't. What do? We leave it the same. Unos escritorios. All right, so check our adjective ending. Our adjective ends in O, meaning that we're using which rule? Hopefully you said number 1. That would be correct. So now what we want to do is check rule number 1. Rule number 1 says that if it is plural and it's masculine, what do? All we need to do is add S, just like here. Unos escritorios bonitos. Do you see how it all matches? Like, that's the important thing to notice. Make sure your endings match. And you know, you have some cases like the one above where they won't match, like una escuela grande, and grande just doesn't match, but those are As I was saying, those are just those rare cases where where they won't match like that, or just in the case where it's feminine and your adjective ends in a consonant or it ends in E. All right, let's look at our next one. Go ahead and try this one. Dos familias. Push pause and try it, see if you get it right. All right, let's check. Dos familias españolas. Why? Because rule number 4 states that if it's feminine, which familias is feminine, if it's feminine, that you have to add an A. And then not only is it feminine, it is plural, which means we had to add an S, okay? Unas casas. Now, I know on this one you would want to put azulas, but it's not. It ends in a consonant. So whenever you make it plural, you're just going to add ES, okay? When it ends in a consonant, it doesn't really matter if this is masculine or feminine. It's the same. Okay, un libro. It stays the same, interesante. We don't want to change it to interesanto. We don't want to do that. If it ends in an E or a consonant, they just stay the same. That's rule number 2. Unos lápices rojos. Very good. So lápices was masculine, and maybe you didn't notice that lápices was masculine because if you look here, it ends in ES, and you were like, oh my gosh, what is it? Is it masculine? Is it feminine? I don't know. Remember what I told you. If you ever get to a word and you're not quite sure, you can always look at the article. It's a dead giveaway if the word is masculine or feminine. All right, let's look at your homework. For homework tonight, you had to find 5 nouns. You can look around your room and see things, your bed or a couch or a chair, and then you just had to describe them, okay? And I wanted you to use an adjective for every rule. So let's look at una ventana, okay? And you can't use mine. You have to use your own. Una ventana bonita would be rule number 1, right? Because bonito ends in O, and we change the O to A. Or it could be una ventana grande, because grande ends in E. That's rule number 2. What about rule number 3? Rule number 3 talks about a mixed group, right? So let's look at unos estudiantes, which would be a mixed group of students, okay? Unos estudiantes malos. It's always going to be a masculine ending when it's a mixed group. Or unos estudiantes españoles, which is rule number 4. Okay? And you might be saying, where's rule number 5? Rule number 5 is all of them because the noun comes before the adjective, and we've already done that. So, bada bing, bada boom. You are done. Fin.